So describe the composition of blood, include composition, components of plasma. So your blood is going to be, oops, I spelled blood wrong already. Blood is basically plasma plus, what's the term? Formed elements, I think is what the book calls it. Formed elements. And so our plasma is going to be about 55% of our blood. Most of which is going to be water. It's mostly H2O. But we're also going to have some proteins in there. So we're going to have like albumin, globulin, sorry. Globulin, and fibrinogen. Now, blood, on the other hand, is going to be approximately 45%, most of which are going to be red blood cells, but we're also going to have some white blood cells and platelets. Yeah. Describe the mechanism by which red blood cells are removed from circulation. So basically, your red blood cells, after about, I think it's 120 days, they start breaking down. And I mean, they can break down beforehand, you know. But so there's going to be a damaged red blood cell. Let's just say maybe he's just not looking so hot. And so basically, a macrophage is going to be like, hey, this guy, he needs to be put out of commission. So a macrophage is going to come up to him. Now, normally, this is going to take place in like the spleen or, oh crap, I forgot the other place. The spleen or the liver. Ooh, I'm so sorry. But I know the spleen is wrong. And so normally this is going to happen there. And basically, the macrophage is going to start breaking down the cell. What's going to happen is it's going to tear open the wall. Parts of it are going to spread out, you know, the insides of it. And then the macrophage is also going to take two specific parts of it. It's going to start breaking down this like very web protein-like structure. And it's going to break it down into, it's a hemoglobin protein structure. And it's going to break it down into amino acids, or what these things. So hold on, let me finish drawing. So the actual like protein web like is going to be broken down into amino acids. But then these hemigroups right here are then going to be taken into one of two things. It's going to be the iron ions and then the hemigroups. Now, the iron ions are going to go along with transferrin and just be transferred. And it's either going to go to the liver and turn into ferrin, or it's going to go back into the bone marrow. This is not the bone marrow. Why did I draw it over there? I was just trying to say that it's like a loop. It's going to go back into the bone marrow of your body, and it's going to become a building block. So I'll just do BB for that. It's going to become a building block for more blood cells, in which case they'll live their life. 120 days goes by, and then they turn into this. Hemigroups, well, this is one of the things they could do. It's either going to be just taken back, or it'll go into the liver and turn into ferrin. The hemigroups, on the other hand, can do sort of the same thing, where they can either be sent back into the bone marrow, become a building block, or they'll make their way down to the liver, and become biliverdin. And then, I should write that down, biliverdin. And then if it actually wants to be used by the liver is going to use that, and it'll turn it into bilirubin. Alrighty. So that's what happens, and that's how they are removed from circulation, how the red blood cell itself is removed. And that is also, the heme is broken down, and what happens to its components of the heme. It'll then make its way, it's either going to go back and become a building block, or it's going to make its way into the liver, become ferrin, bilirubin, which can then become coagulated or uncoagulated, or oh my gosh, I gotta pause this. Okay, conjugated was the word I was looking for, sorry. It'll either become unconjugated bilirubin and transferrin or transported on the liver, and then it'll basically either become conjugated, which will then be secreted into bile, it'll go into the intestines, it'll then turn it into bilirubin, and then urobilinogen basically makes its way into the kidneys. Kidneys turns it yellow, urobilin, and then it will either make its way into the kidney and become yellow, or it'll make its way through the duct and then turn into stercobilin, which is then brown. And so that's how that goes when it becomes bilirubin. But the rest of it is quite short and simple of a route. Let me look at the next question. Let me scroll down a second. Okay, part 2, describe the 3 mechanisms that contribute to hemostasis. Sorry. I cannot speak today. Hemostasis, I'm going to try and sit down now because we are going to be a little bit further down. So let me move you over so I can see better. So hemostasis, basically what hemostasis is it's just stoppage of bleeding. Now there's 3 ways to do it. There's vasoconstriction. There's going to be platelet plugging or aggregation. I don't know if I'll have enough room here. And then there's going to be just coagulation. So vasoconstriction is very, very straightforward. If you're bleeding, your body is going to immediately, this is probably like the most fast acting, but it's also the most temporary. This does not last. But basically you start bleeding and your body's like, holy cow, we're bleeding. Let's just constrict everything and try to not have blood flow go there. Because the less blood flows into the wound, the less blood we lose. So really smart. It's just going to decrease blood flow to injury. Platelet aggregation is going to be, so this one's a bit longer, but the VWF, the Van Willebrand factor, is going to be released by endothelial cells. So endothelial holy cow, cells. They're going to then attach platelets to collagen. So these guys will then, let's draw. So here's the little guys, here's the little platelet. That's actually not a platelet, but let's just pretend that is. There we are. So endothelial cells have these guys, the Van Willebrand factors. And the Van Willebrand factors are going to attach to the actual wound, the collagen. Okay, so here's a couple of these guys. Now, platelet's going to come along and be like, oh, look, yeah, there we are. They're going to attach, the Van Willebrand factors are going to attach platelets to collagen. Now, this is going to start activating the platelets. And then when the platelets are activated, they're going to change shape into this sort of flower-looking thing, like Brother Shaw drew. Reminded me like the flowers you would see on like SpongeBob episode. But so they're going to activate the platelets, platelets are activated, and they're going to do a number of things. They're going to start releasing alpha granules, which are more than Willebrand factors, and also fibrinogen, right? Oh, yes, fibrinogen. Fibrinogen, and also, is that it? PGDF? Platelet. I forgot what the actual name of that thing is. I am so sorry. Platelet something. Destructive growth factor. I know it's growth factor. I don't remember the second word. Where is it? I am in too deep now. I have to say it. Platelet-derived growth factor. There it is. Okay, back to the questions. So, platelet-derived growth factors. And yeah, so there's that. But they're also going to do dense granules. Now, these guys are going to be ADP, basically. And then, so now fibrogen receptors are going to grow on these guys. So this is a fibrogen, I guess I could do it in a different color. These are fibrogen receptors. The platelet's also going to release, I guess this is what I could do. The platelet's also going to release thromboxane. And then thromboxane is going to activate more and more of the platelets. Fibrinogen is then going to attach to the actual receptors here, which are then going to link more platelets together. And if I can draw, now we're going to have, I'm going to draw a real small one, but now we're going to have a platelet like this, and it's going to start covering the wound. And then, yeah, it'll just start linking more and more platelets, and pretty soon this is when the coagulation cascade starts. And now for coagulation, there's going to be 3 different ways for coagulation. There's going to be intrinsic, extrinsic, and common. Maybe I should write in a different color to make things a little bit easier. So intrinsic is going to be sort of like how do I word it? It's more of a chain than the others, I guess, if that makes sense. And we're going to do these different factors. And so it's going to be factor 12 that then turns and activates factor 11, which then activates factor 9, which then activates factor 8. And all of these things are going to be activating each other. This is also going to be activated by collagen, or on collagen too, I should say on collagen. These are all activated, or triggered by collagen. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for, triggered. Extrinsic, on the other hand, is going to activate the factor 7, and this is triggered by the tissue factor, which is also known as factor 3. And then for common, it's going to be factor 10, also in addition factor 5, and this is going to make the prothrombin activating complex. And what this does is this turns prothrombin into thrombin. Now, thrombin then will take fibrinogen, and it's going to turn it into fibrin. Fibrin is the fibrous mesh net that is going to then go over the wound and all of the red blood cells, white blood cells, everything that's there. And it's just going to start coagulating the blood itself, thickening it up. Thickening/coagulating. And this actually, what I read in the book that I didn't know if we went over in lecture, and I thought this was really interesting, was that this pathway, if that's the right, yeah, this pathway, the common pathway, is actually a positive feedback loop. So this builds upon each other, which also I feel like is what this platelet plug is. But I found it very interesting that it just, once it starts happening, it constantly happens, which is a good thing because when we get a wound, we want the bleeding to stop. Discuss the role of TPA, plasminogen, and plasmin. This is pretty simple. I don't really have room. I'm going to erase my little drawing here. And let's write in red. So this is quite simple. TPA, plasminogen. So we're going to have plasminogen, and this is going to be released by the liver. And what this guy does is he basically will get activated by TPA will come in when we have a wound. TPA is going to come in eventually, and this is going to be, I think the book says like a couple days after a wound and a clot has formed. So plasminogen is going to come by and be like, okay, or I guess TPA is the thing that actually notices. But TPA will then activate plasminogen, and they will then turn into plasmin. And so TPA is released by, I think, endothelial cells. And so plasminogen is just the unactivated form. We have this all the time. We're making it all the time. TPA comes in and is like, hey, we are going to activate you. You need to do your job. Turns it into plasmin. What plasmin's job is, as far as I know, the only thing it does, is it breaks down fibrin. Which is a really, really good thing. It's very necessary. It's needed. And we want this because if we get a wound, we want the blood to clot. We want all this to happen. But what would happen if it never went away? Like there has to be some way, some form, some process for us to get rid of the clot. And that's what plasmin does, is it will come in a couple days after the clot has been formed and the wound is healing, and it will start to break down the actual clot itself. That way, the wound is covered, you're healing, but now you can return to normal because with the clot, you're blocking off certain vessels. You're not having optimal blood flow. So, yeah, that's basically what plasmin, plasminogen, and TPA, they all just sort of mesh together. And that is the last question.